Hey guys, it's James here with Kickstarter Boardgame Spotlight, and I am here with Mike from Starving Artist. Hey Mike, give him a wave.
Hey James, how are you?
Doing good. So Mike just wrapped up an awesome campaign for Starving Artists, and it capped $50,000. It had a what 1300 or so backers.
1307, I believe.
Yeah, exact number. Okay, so one of the things that definitely give us an overview of Starving Artists. So in case someone is not familiar with the game, it's really innovative. I thought it was great. I jumped in on it just as soon as I saw it.
Sure, yeah. Starving Artists, I think what the biggest draw is that it's tagged as a paint by cube card game where players collect paint cubes to finish great works of art. All of the cards are beautiful masterpieces from Picasso to lesser known artists. And the players are collecting cubes and applying them to canvases in an attempt to earn points, more paint, and sort of the twist here is that they also need to eat. So they need food for selling their canvases.
Yeah, one of the things that jumped out at me was, they're gorgeous, right? So like if I play it with my son or anybody, right? It's just a good looking piece. It's cool to see all that different art, and so I really like the cubes match the colors. That whole dynamic is just something that I haven't seen done before.
Yeah, it was a pretty special game. Even right as I was playtesting it, I took it to a proto spiel, and it was the first time ever where I had a game design where the non-playtesting players just stopped to look and like literally would just pick the cards up and apply cubes, even if they weren't playing the game. At some points, even distractingly, like taking the cards out of play to just place cubes on it. It was a very interesting experience, and I could tell right away that it was engaging, even just from the pure aesthetic of it.
Awesome. Did you what kind of inspired you? Are you an art lover?
So no, it originated out of a Game Crafter game design contest sponsored by Grey Gnome Games. They were looking for a survival contest game, and when I was sort of looking around for something to do, I knew there was going to be a lot of entries into a Grey Gnome Games contest where they were going to be the standard sorts of survival games, lost in space, running away from zombies, being attacked by killer bees, whatever it happened to be. I was looking for something that was a little bit special. It led me to thinking about other survival mechanisms, things like starvation. Well, starvation led right to the dad joke about, well, what about a game of literally starving artists? And then from there, I started playing with the dad joke idea, and it turned out to be something pretty special, actually.
Isn't it funny the things that start a train, like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon almost to get to the end result? Started here, ends up here. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting example of the creative process, at least for me, getting from, how do I do something special and different to, well, wouldn't it be funny if, to a game that actually works, plays, and has a very special feel to it, frankly.
Yep. So you definitely seem to have like a student of marketing. You ran a very well ran campaign. It checked a lot of boxes. So with that though, what were some of the mistakes that you feel like you made with your first campaign?
Well, first of all, thank you. I tried really hard to make sure to check all the boxes. I fundamentally, I studied other people's Kickstarter campaigns. I was trying to do the right things. I looked and studied the best practices before I even sort of jumped in. I know I made a couple mistakes as I was going, and nothing that I would ever put in the category of a disaster from a campaign management or super detrimental to the campaign. And it was partly because I underestimated the actual success of my campaign by a lot. Had I figured that I would more than quadruple my funding goal and get as many backers as I would have. I probably would have spent more time ahead of time getting sort of big name reviewers to also look at it. Maybe would have invested a little bit more in some third party advertising. To give you an idea, when I first started this, I was looking at a campaign where I was like, well, maybe I could get a couple hundred backers to buy my game. And it just ended up in a far different place.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, apparently we're having a fire across the street here.
I hope you're okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. I don't smell anything. So,
all right, perfect.
So I guess that kind of rolls into the question of what would you do differently now, kind of knowing that? Who would you have reached out to? Have you really looked back on some of the things that you might have done differently?
Yeah, so a bunch of the backers early on, like where's the Rado runs through reviews? Where are some of those ones where people are looking for, oh, this is a $50,000 campaign, you should have all of these other things. I probably would have more preemptively sought some of those out. I did take most of the answers to those questions. I took a very deliberate approach to my reviewers and things like that. I only sent the game to people who had ahead of time expressed an interest in the game. They saw it on Twitter, they saw it on Facebook, they saw it from a friend, or they play tested with me, or somebody recommended it. But I probably would have gone out and found those other reviewers with larger game interested viewers and things like that, in part because it was almost expected at some point that a game of this size have those things. I just didn't have that. I might have thought about doing things like a Board Game Geek ad, or looking at some of the other places where there was a larger population of gamers, things like that, because people were asking, well, why aren't you doing more of these things? Well, I didn't expect this many people. But hindsight's always 2020. Some of those things I didn't know going in that was going to be the case.
Sure. Do you feel like, I know one of the things that I struggle with trying to launch my game is especially on your first one, you have no idea what your response is going to be, like you were talking about. I struggle with how much should I spend on advertising? How much should I spend on prototypes and marketing? Did you have any sort of, I know this is off script, but did you have any sort of like quote there or advice on what you did there?
So first of all, I was relatively lucky. My art was very inexpensive, mostly all entirely free. So at some level, I had the advantage of having room to play with, getting prototypes out, review copies sent out. I did spend money. I actually did pay Paul Koska and Brandon Garver to do a campaign video for me. I did not do the creator self-created video because, well, I would probably be terrible at creating one of those. They did a fantastic job doing that. I knew what my budget was roughly out of pocket. I had a spreadsheet. I was keeping track of my costs, my expenses, I ended up sending out something like 10 review copies, and of my game that was actually relatively expensive prototype to keep sending out to people. But roughly I knew where my budget was, and I kept that in mind. I'm lucky that we ended up where we did, backer-wise, because it has now provided me a lot of extra flexibility and probably more room to have done more, but I just didn't know that at the time.
Sure, yeah. We just placed our order for our prototypes from Game Crafter this week. It was 22 copies, so it hurt my feelings a little bit.
So when I did it, I was doing them one at a time as reviewers were requesting them. Actually, interestingly, one of the things a bunch of reviewers commented on was I gave them specialized copies of it. I had put their logo on the front of the cover, did nice things like that. But it was an expensive way to go about ordering one unit copies as essentially on demand as people were requesting them.
Okay, so as you sifted through a lot of the Kickstarters, learning how you wanted to go about it, what were maybe 2 or 3 of the most common mistakes that you usually saw and things that you knew that you needed to avoid when you set up your campaign?
The first thing that always strikes me when I look at new campaigns of folks who have clearly never done it before is they're trying to copy the really massively popular, super successful Kickstarters, thinking this must be what the formula is to a campaign. So they'll have a bunch of exclusives. They'll have merchandise like t-shirts and hats and things that are largely a distraction from their actual campaign. They'll have complicated tier structures and, things like social media goals and the whole lot. You can go down the list and you look at it and go, you're never going to achieve this if you have this small of a campaign. And, I tried to largely avoid those things. While I did have, an add-on of a playmat, it was something that I felt actually sold the product even a little bit better. It wasn't just more money for somebody to spend like a t-shirt or a keychain or a USB key. So my first thing is just, your campaign is not those campaigns, and you should not be taking lessons from Exploding Kittens or, Cyanide and Happiness's campaigns or the Zombicide campaigns. You see it a lot in almost every one of the, what do you think of my brand new Kickstarter campaign? It's very complicated. The second thing that I see a lot is people whose sole marketing seems to be just throw the Kickstarter campaign up on the site. They don't do any community building. They don't do any check out my game. There's very little play testing. The extent of their exposure is going to be a handful of reviews from smaller sites. They haven't done the pre-campaign legwork. And so those are my two big things I see as a problem. If I haven't seen your game on Twitter before, if I haven't read about it ahead of time, if you haven't got it posted to this great Druid City Facebook page and get it mentioned at some point someplace else, you're probably already in for a hard time.
Yeah, and I want to take 10 seconds and throw out a pet peeve. I call it the drive-by. When people, they join, I see it all the time on the Spotlight page. They join, they throw on their page, and that's it. Like they've never engaged anyone. They're not a part of the community at all in the group, and people pick up on that. It's not a genuine, like we're just being used.
Yeah, and I think that that not only happens there, it happens on forums everywhere. Boardgame Geek gets it to, even at the Game Crafter, you visit the chat, there are people that are like, you should check out my really awesome game. Well, that's great. Fantastic. You've contributed nothing else to the community. You have people with Twitter accounts that are 1 month old saying you should back my game, or, I'll follow you if you back my game. It's like, no, that's not the way that this works. There's lots of ways to build community. That's a really bad way to do it.
Yeah, I want to do some more, maybe its own series on attraction marketing, because that is, content marketing and attraction marketing are two of the bigger things that have really taken over general marketing in most of the verticals and in many other industries too. So that can definitely apply here. One of the reasons I do the Spotlight is so, I can help other people get exposed at an affordable rate, because, you go to get that banner on BGG like you were talking about earlier, and it's $500 or $750. I mean, that's real money. You're not playing anymore.
Right. Yep. And I would not, for the life of me, recommend that a first-time creator, that's the very first step in their advertising campaign, because that's going to be wasted money. Frankly, if you do want to follow any of those massively successful campaigns, the things that they usually bring is an actual community of people who are, if not there for the brand, they're there because they like the creator, they like the content, they like something other than just the thing that they're there to buy. So what would
you tell someone who, let's just say, building community, maybe they're extremely introverted, right? And they're a first-time creator. What kind of advice would you give them to build community before their campaign?
Well, I would say that there's a couple things you could do. One, you could back other people's campaigns. You can participate from the background in somebody else's. You can watch, contribute, comment, do other things that don't put you out in the front and center, but you're at least out there in the community. You see campaigns where it's their first created and zero backed. It's like, well, you have not participated whatsoever in any of this community. There are other things you can, I had a couple people who ended up backing at pretty high tiers who, they saw my preview page and they didn't go out there and comment publicly on Facebook, but what they did was say, hey, you could really change a couple of these paragraphs, or it would be really good if you could do, if you could add this content, or here's some typographical edits that you really ought to make, or here's some comments or suggestions that, think you probably overlooked. You can send that feedback directly to the campaign creator. You can start building community that way. You don't have to have 8 million Twitter followers and a Facebook page. You can do a whole bunch of ways and start becoming part of the community. I do think if you're going to be a creator, though, being an introvert and not getting out there and putting yourself out there a little bit is going to be a hindrance.
Yeah, you may want to go the publisher route. Start pitching your ideas there.
Exactly.
I definitely have seen what you're talking about there, especially on Kickstarter. I know one of the ways that I found out about a lot of games is I went to the Find Friends. If you link your Kickstarter to your Facebook, it'll find the friends and cross-reference them. So then you can follow all the people, and every time that they back a campaign or create a campaign, you get an email. And so I see people, especially Jonathan Gilmore, shout out, he's about to hit 300 backed campaigns. It allows me on my end to be able to see what's out there, what's going on, and then I'm able to go and kind of make contacts with people that have new campaigns that I wouldn't have probably known about if it wasn't for that.
Now I'm going to go connect my Facebook to my Kickstarter. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, and it's cool because it'll take all your friends and list them out as far as in order of most back projects. And so now I feel like I've got a little competition going on. I'm like, well, I'm not going to catch Jonathan Gilmore. That's crazy.
That's a lot.
Because I think I'm only at about 100, and he's at 300. So, yeah, he's doing it.
I'm 20 behind you, man.
Hey, that's still pretty strong. What's crazy is I've only gotten a handful in yet. So at some point, the floodgates are going to open, and I'm going to get in trouble with my spouse. She's going to be pissed.
Just don't look at the unfulfilled campaign list. That's painful sometimes to look.
Yeah, it can be. All right, so post-fun campaign. So all the fun stuff, all the hype's over. You got it done. You've got your link up so people can still pre-order it. But now, talk to us a little bit about the steps that go into the post-campaign fun process.
So it's definitely true what they say that the hard part for the creator starts after the campaign. It's only been a short 2 weeks since my campaign has ended. I got the email just today from Kickstarter that my funds have finally been released, which is fantastic. But in the interim, for mine, we added almost twice as many cards to the game as were originally in there. So I have been working feverishly in the middle of the night to finish the 40 or so cards that we added. I sent out, we mentioned the Game Crafter again, I sent out my final prototype of this to get the cards that I had just created, play tested and printed so that I can make sure that they're all good before I go off and order 2,200 copies. I've been prototyping the magnetic box we unlocked. I've been negotiating with Chinese manufacturers for a print run of 2,200 to 2,500 games. I've been trying to get some of my higher tier backers where I offered them the opportunity to feature some of their game to get me their art and their contract signed and all of that stuff back. There's been just a flurry of things to do. That doesn't include the fact that I still have to get the rule book proofread and typeset, and I have to get all of the things in order to fulfill internationally, things like that, get my Amazon sellers account set up. There's just been a crazy amount of work to do.
Are you going the distributor route with your extra copies? Have you been in contact with some of those?
So thought about it. I mentioned to a friend earlier today that the idea of post Kickstarter retail and distribution channel sales of my game, I can't even think about that yet, man. There's just so many things to even get. The idea of getting 1,307 backers, their copies of the games, is right now first and foremost for me to get done, or at least planned for, so that by August I'm submitting my files, getting it ready to be printed and hopefully in the backers' hands by Thanksgiving.
Yep. I'm surprised with the attention that your campaign got that you didn't have distributors coming to you. So
they did. It's really hard to sometimes sort that stuff out from what do I really need to focus my attention on right now. I got a whole bunch from all over the world. I got a handful of distributors and retailers who are like, how can we get this post-campaign? So
Sure. So what is your plan to do with these that you're ordering?
So right now,
about 1,000.
Yeah. So right now, there's about 1,570 copies that are actually going to retailers, backers, just to fulfill the actual demand. At the moment, most of it is going to get just shipped to Amazon and sold via Amazon unless and until I find places to send other copies. If, for example, ACD Distribution wants copies to put into retail, things like that.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, obviously, you just told me that you're really, really busy and have 1,000 things to do, but do you have any other games in the pipeline? What else you got in that think tank over there?
So that wasn't enough for you? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
So
I want to know all the things.
You want all the things. So I actually signed with another, I did sign one of my games to another publisher, an educational games publisher, a game called Happy Little Planets, which was also, interestingly enough, Game Crafter game contest entrant. It took second place in the educational games. Also another game where when I was prototyping and playtesting it at Protospiel and a convention, it got a lot of interesting looks because of how you play cards, which is you actually play cards in a circle to form a planet, kind of like the Little Prince, and then your planet attracts furry little woodland creatures depending on whether it has the appropriate habitat and things. So at the end of the game, all the players end up with a planet complete with terrain and climate and furry creatures that go on it. So that probably will be a Kickstarter sometime early next year.
Okay.
I am not doing it.
Okay. One at a time is good enough for you?
One at a time. It'll be just after I think I fulfill Starving Artist that I'll go.
So do you have any idea, as far as other than just handing them the design, how does that work? Because I know there's a lot of people that would be interested in knowing more about that.
How to sign with a publisher?
Yeah, how it's went since you decided to go that route.
So it's pretty brand new. Signed a contract with them actually just last week, sometime after the campaign ended. They let me know that they were interested in publishing it a little while ago, and it took me a little while to find the time to read the contract because I am a lawyer, read the contract, and get it back to them. But, you know, me and one of the co-designers who worked on it with me, we're just taking a small percentage of whatever the end resulting revenues are. So
okay. All right.
I don't have to do anything other than I'm obviously going to clearly support the campaign. I'll probably take a very similar social media approach, and act as if it is my own little baby as well. So
okay. And so do you feel like they're gonna? I know a lot of creators worry because they don't want to give up that control. As far as, are they going to change my art? Are they going to change my theme? Are they going to adjust my mechanics? Things like that. Have you had any conversations with them about things like that?
I hope they change the art. To be very honest, I am not so attached to things that I would feel heartbroken about changes to either art, maybe a little bit to the mechanics, because obviously that was the heart and soul of it. I'm not sure what they're acquiring otherwise. But I think that there is a lot of responsibility when you're a publisher or creator to put out the best thing you think you can sell. And so if that means taking feedback from the publisher saying, we really ought to make this way, well, they think they can sell that better than I could sell it, or I had time or energy to put into it. That is clearly their decision. I think if it went 180 degrees the other direction from where I was, we wouldn't even be on the same page. That is just not an aspect that bothers me that much. And frankly, as a designer, you got to be able to take feedback and criticism and playtesting input. And, even Starving Artists, it might surprise you, where I ended up is similar to where I started, but there were a lot of things that people are like, you just can't do this. You got to do something different. You got to find another way to make this work. Everybody likes this one aspect of the game. How do you feature that, even if it wasn't your original idea? And so, I think that's part of the design process, to be frank.
Okay. Yeah. I know it's always hard to listen when you're especially married to something and you think, man, I can't change this. This is the heart and soul of it. But you send it off to, say, 10 playtesters, and 6 or 7 out of 10 don't like that part of it, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I definitely see that a lot as far as people need to do a better job of being self-aware and kind of letting their guard down and being open to some constructive criticism. I mean, nobody wants to listen to trolls, but
right. Well, and I mean, when people offer thoughtful, insightful criticisms, it's really hard to say, nope, you're totally wrong. Though it happens all the time, and you've seen it, I'm sure, on Kickstarter pages where it's like, can you guys give me your opinions about this page? They get a long list of, helpful, insightful suggestions, and then they launch the next day having incorporated none of them. Like, congratulations. So,
all right, good information, good talk.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So I think that I would like to check back in maybe in a few months and maybe kind of get a recap on, because I know on my end I could use that information as far as post campaign. Hopefully, I have a really successful campaign in July, and I'm in the same position. But people may hate it. Whatever. I hope you don't. I don't think you will. But it would be really interesting to get more input from you about how things have went as you shuffled through the manufacturers and dealing with shipping, because sweet baby Jesus, shipping around the world for this is ridiculous.
It
and
is.
People get all up in arms. Like, I mean, I see these comments, it costs so much to ship it to Europe and this and that. But guys, it is not an easy task to figure out how to ship something from China to everywhere in the world.
My original campaign did not have EU-friendly shipping as a thing, and it took all of 4 days before people were like banging down the door to make it EU-friendly shipping. And I don't think people understand it is not an easy decision to do, especially if you're looking at a smaller campaign as what you were expecting. If it was $12,000 campaign, I would have very much had a hard time making EU-friendly shipping an option. But turns out I'm in pretty good shape, and I have plenty of EU backers now. So maybe that was another one of the things I wish I had done right out of the gate. But how in the world can most new creators anticipate that? So
yeah, it's really difficult. It's hard to even, the big companies have done it a few times, so they've got the things in place to make it happen. But for us first timers, it's trying to put a puzzle together that you don't even know all the pieces.
Yeah, go read blogs. That's the best I got for you, man. But yeah, I'd be happy to come back and chat, especially after probably sometime in August or September, after all of the files and stuff are submitted and manufacturing's underway. I can let you know shipping decisions I've made, Chinese manufacturing decisions I've made, how it all went down, the disasters in translation or otherwise. I'm happy to share my wins and losses with everyone.
That'd be great. All right, Mike. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Everybody, let's be kind to somebody. Let's back some Kickstarters, and let's have happy gaming. Mike, see you next time.
Thanks.